They say blood is thicker than water, but that year the gravy at our Thanksgiving table felt more like venom. I sat there, clutching my napkin until my knuckles turned white, while my mother painted a masterpiece of lies for our guests. She didn't know I had the receipts tucked in my pocket. She didn't know that by the time dessert was served, her perfect life would be in pieces. The smell of roasted turkey and rosemary usually brings back memories of warmth, but for me, Lily Rose, it only triggers the memory of a cold, calculated betrayal. I stood in the hallway of my childhood home, the hardwood floors creaking under my feet, like they were trying to warn me to turn back. Through the archway, I could hear the clink of silverware and the high-pitched performative laugh of my mother, Diane. She was in her element. The centerpiece was perfect, the lighting was dimmed just right, and her audience was captive. Our extended family, aunts, uncles, and cousins I hadn't seen in years, were nodding along as she spoke. I paused just out of sight, listening to the smooth, melodic tone of her voice. It was a voice I used to trust, until I realized it was designed for manipulation. "It's just so tragic," I heard her sigh. The sound was followed by a soft clink of her wine glass. "We tried everything for Lily. We gave her every opportunity, every resource. But some people just aren't built for responsibility. She's struggling. Again. It's a mother's greatest heartbreak to see her child choose a path of such chaos." I felt a hot sting behind my eyes, but I didn't let the tears fall. Chaos. That was the word she used to describe the life I had built after she tried to tear it down. For 3 years I had been the family ghost. My mother had told everyone I was a lost soul, a drifter, or worse, someone who had stolen from her and disappeared. The reality? I was a senior analyst at a firm 3 states away, living a quiet, successful life that I had built from the ashes of the tuition fund she had secretly drained to pay off her own gambling debts. I stepped into the dining room. The room went silent. The air felt like it had been sucked out of the space. My Aunt Sarah dropped her fork, and my cousin Mark stopped mid-chew. Diane, my mother, froze. Her glass was halfway to her lips, and for a split second, the mask slipped. Her eyes widened, not with joy, but with genuine, unadulterated fear. "Lily Rose," she gasped, recovering quickly with a hand over her heart. You're here. We weren't expecting you. You look so tired, honey." "I'm not tired, Mom," I said, my voice steady, sounding clearer than I felt. "I'm just early for the main course." I took the empty seat at the end of the long mahogany table, the seat she had likely kept empty to symbolize my failure to the rest of the family. I looked around the table. Everyone looked uncomfortable, glancing between me and Diane. They had been fed a diet of lies for years, and now the problem child was sitting right in front of them, wearing a tailored blazer and holding a folder that contained her undoing. "We were just talking about your situation," Uncle Arthur said, his voice hesitant. "Your mother mentioned you were having a hard time finding steady work." I smiled, though there was no humor in it. I looked directly at Diane, who was frantically trying to signal me with her eyes to stay quiet. "Is that what she told you? That's interesting. Mom, why don't you tell them about the letter I sent you last month, the one with the official promotion notice? Or maybe we should talk about the bank statements from 4 years ago." Diane's face went from pale to a blotchy, angry red. "Lily, this is Thanksgiving. We are going to air your grievances and delusions at the dinner table. If you're going to be hysterical, you can leave." "I'm not hysterical," I replied, opening the folder. "I'm just a statistician who finally finished the math on where my life savings went." I pulled out a single sheet of paper and slid it across the table toward my Aunt Sarah. It wasn't a letter. It was a ledger of withdrawals from an account that was supposed to be my future, signed by a hand that everyone at this table recognized. The room remained deathly quiet. Only the sound of the ticking grandfather clock in the corner filled the silence. Diane reached for the paper, but Sarah was faster. As she read the numbers, her eyebrows shot up. "Diane," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "What is this?" "It's a lie," Diane snapped, her voice cracking. "She's always been jealous. She's trying to ruin my day." I stood up, leaning my hands on the table. The smell of the turkey was nauseating now, I didn't come here to ruin your day, Mom. I came to take my name back. You've spent years telling these people I was a failure to cover up the fact that you robbed me. You shamed me to keep yourself safe. But the thing about statistics is, the numbers never lie. I looked at the guests. I saw the realization dawning on their faces. The pity they had held for my mother was transforming into something else. Disgust. Enjoy the dinner, I said, my voice barely a whisper. It's the most expensive meal you'll ever have, considering what it cost you. The silence that followed my exit from the dining room didn't last long. I hadn't even made it to the front door before the explosion happened behind me. It wasn't a physical blast, but the sound of chairs screeching against the floor and voices rising in a panicked, ugly crescendo. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the front door, closing my eyes for just a second. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times. In my head, I was a hero. In reality, I just felt hollow. Lily, get back here right now. It was Diane. Her hostess voice was gone, replaced by the sharp, jagged tone she used when she was losing control. I heard her heels clicking rapidly on the hardwood. I turned around just as she rounded the corner, her face contorted in a way that would have terrified me 10 years ago. Now it just looked pathetic. You think you're so clever, don't you? She hissed, stopping inches from my face. She smelled like expensive perfume and cheap white wine. Coming into my home, in front of my sisters, and pulling a stunt like that? Those papers prove nothing. I'll tell them you forged them. I'll tell them you're back on whatever spiral you were on before. There was no spiral, Mom, I said, looking her dead in the eye. There was just a daughter who worked 3 jobs to pay for a degree you already spent. And there were no resources you gave me. The only thing you gave me was a reason to leave and never look back. Behind her, the rest of the family started to trickle into the hallway. They looked like they had seen a ghost. My Aunt Sarah was still holding the ledger, her thumbs stroking the edge of the paper as if she were trying to rub the truth away. Diane, Sarah said, her voice sounding small, I recognized your signature on the transfer to the offshore betting site. It's the same way you used to sign our mother's checks when she was sick. You told us Lily spent that money on a lifestyle she couldn't afford. Diane whirled around, her hands shaking. Sarah, don't be naive. She's manipulated you. She's always been the manipulative one. The only person manipulating anyone here is you, I intervened. I reached into my blazer pocket and pulled out a small digital recorder. I hadn't even turned it on yet, but the sight of it made Diane's eyes go wide. I have the voicemails, Mom. The ones where you begged me not to come today. The ones where you offered to pay me back if I just stayed away for one more holiday so you could keep the lie alive for the family. In that moment, the power dynamic shifted completely. The woman who had held me under her thumb for 2 decades seemed to shrink. She looked at her sisters, her brother, and her nieces. The social capital she had spent her entire life building, the image of the perfect, suffering mother, was evaporating in the heat of the hallway. Lily, please, she whispered, her voice finally breaking. Not like this. We're family. Family doesn't use their children as a scapegoat for their own addictions, I replied. I opened the front door. The crisp November air hit me like a splash of cold water, waking me up from the nightmare of the last hour. I stepped out onto the porch, but I didn't leave yet. I turned back to the room full of people who had judged me based on the word of a liar. I'm going to a diner down the street, I told the room, ignoring my mother entirely. If anyone wants to actually get to know the person I've become, instead of the person you were told I was, you know where to find me. If not, enjoy the turkey. I hear the stuffing is excellent this year. I walked down the stairs, the sound of my own heels steady and rhythmic. I didn't look back to see if anyone followed. I had spent years running away from this house, but for the first time I wasn't running. I was just moving forward. As I reached my car, I heard a door slam behind me. I expected it to be Diane, coming for one last round of verbal abuse. But when I turned around, it was Aunt Sarah and my cousin Mark, clutching their coats and looking at me with a mixture of guilt and awe. Lily, wait, Sarah called out. We didn't know. We should have asked you. We should have checked. Yes, I said, unlocking my car. The local diner was glowing like a neon island in the middle of the dark, quiet suburbs. It was the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like burnt beans. But to me, it felt like a sanctuary. I sat in a corner booth, watching the steam rise from a porcelain mug. 10 minutes later, the bell above the door jingled. Aunt Sarah and Mark walked in, looking out of place in their formal Thanksgiving attire. They slid into the booth opposite me. The silence was heavy, but for once, it wasn't my job to break it. "We left," Sarah said finally, her voice hushed. "After you walked away, your mother," she went into a full meltdown. She started screaming at everyone, blaming the bank, blaming the system, even blaming us for listening to you. It was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. Mark looked down at his hands. "Lily, I'm sorry. I remember seeing you work those double shifts at the coffee shop back in college, while she was telling us you were off partying. We just thought, why would a mother lie about something like that? It didn't make sense, so we just believed her." "That's how she operates," I said, my voice low and steady. "She makes the truth so ugly that it's easier to believe the pretty lie. She didn't just steal my money, she stole my reputation. She made sure that if I ever tried to tell the truth, I'd already be labeled as the unstable one." I pulled my laptop from my bag, the same laptop I used to run complex data sets for my firm. I turned it around and showed them a spreadsheet. It wasn't just a ledger, it was a timeline. Every time Diane had borrowed from my account, it coincided with a trip she took to the nearby casino, or an emergency she claimed to have. "I didn't do this to be petty," I explained. "I did this because I'm tired of being a ghost. I've been living in a different state, building a life from zero, while my own family thought I was a failure." "Do you have any idea what that does to a person?" Sarah reached across the table and touched my hand. Her eyes were red. "She told us you were in rehab last year, Lily. She even asked us for money to help pay for it. I gave her $5,000. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. She hadn't just used me as a shield, she had used me as a weapon to hump the rest of the family. The betrayal was deeper than I had even imagined. My mother hadn't just shamed me. She had turned my existence into a fraudulent charity case. "She's sick, Sarah," I said, the pity finally outweighing the anger. "But I can't be the one to fix her, and I won't be the one to pay for it anymore." We sat there for an hour, piecing together the years of deception. It was like a puzzle where every piece was a jagged shard of glass. By the time we finished, the diner was empty except for us and a tired waitress. My phone started blowing up with texts, mostly from Diane. They went from "how dare you" to "please come back, I'm your mother," to "I'll kill myself if you do this." I didn't reply. I had seen this cycle too many times. The threat was just another tactic in her manual of manipulation. "What are you going to do now?" Mark asked, as we walked out into the freezing night air. I looked toward the direction of my childhood home where the lights were probably still on and the turkey was sitting cold and forgotten on the table. "I'm going to finish what I started. She thinks she can lie her way out of this because it's a family matter. She's about to find out that when you mess with a statistician, the consequences are very, very real." I didn't go back to the house that night. Instead, I stayed at a hotel, watching the sunrise over the frosted highway. My mother's messages had turned into a frantic, incoherent stream of apologies and excuses, but I wasn't looking for an apology. I was looking for closure. The next morning, I returned to the house one last time. The festive decorations on the porch looked tragic in the harsh daylight. I didn't knock. I used my old key, stepped inside, and found the living room in shambles. Diane was sitting on the sofa, still in her Thanksgiving dress, looking aged and broken. "I've called the lawyer, Lily," she said without looking up. "I'll give you the house. Just don't tell the others about the rehab money. They'll never forgive me." "I don't want your house, Mom," I said, placing a final document on the coffee table. "And I already told them, you don't get to keep secrets anymore. That's the price of the truth." The document wasn't a lawsuit. It was a formal repayment plan, drafted and notarized. I told her that if she didn't sign it and begin making monthly payments, even if it was only $50, I would take the evidence to the authorities. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the accountability. She signed it with a trembling hand, her tears smudging the ink. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the urge to comfort her. I felt nothing but the quiet satisfaction of a solved equation. As I walked out to my car, I saw Aunt Sarah's car pulled up in the driveway. She wasn't there for Diane. She was there to say goodbye to me. We hugged, a real hug this time, and she promised that Christmas would be different. It would be at her house, and the guest list would be built on honesty, not performance. I drove away from that town, watching it disappear in my rearview mirror. The weight that had been sitting on my chest for years was gone. I was Lily Rose, and I wasn't a failure, a drifter, or a ghost. I was the woman who had survived the lies and come out stronger on the other side.